Good evening, I'm the Friendly Senpai, and today we're going to be talking about Haruka Shitsuji, otherwise known as Naked Butlers. Naked Butlers is a yaoi visual novel created by Mada Labo and localized and published by Manga Gamer in November of last year. It tells the story of Tomoaki Maeda, a 21-year-old bachelor that is fired from his job after defending his coworker from a molester. As his bills whittle away his savings, he resorts to whoring around for food before receiving a mysterious ad that tells him he can make 30,000 yen a day by just lazing around on his ass. When he takes up the offer, he finds that the job entails him filling the role of a master of the house at some old geezer's estate while he's away on some month-long business trip. While the geezer is away, Maeda is essentially just being tasked with making sure that the butlers are still keeping up with their duty. I feel like when Player.me sent me this ambassador shirt, this really wasn't the kind of promotion they were looking for. Okay, let's get one thing straight. Get it? Because it's a gay visual novel. I have got to start doing research on the visual novels I'm planning on reviewing because this is not a comedy. Manga Gamer marked it as a comedy, and I thought this was gonna be some fun shit, but no. Maeda is a goddamn sociopath. For one, he is a deranged and abusive monster that beats and rapes and manipulates and literally murders those around him until the stress literally breaks them and reduces them to little more than dick warmers that he harasses throughout the day. It's actually kind of spectacular. You see, there's a very clear difference between the portrayal of the main character in Haruka Shitsuji and the piece of shit MCs that you see in most visual novels. The writers painted him as a bad guy and didn't waste time with attempting to justify his actions or excuse them. He is the villain of his own story. Now, that's not to say that it didn't make his actions any less disturbing, because you could not be any farther from the truth. Leaving your lover tied up so he can be raped while you watch is revolting. Forcing your lover to kneel in the dirt while literally forcing them to be fucked by a dog made me recoil in ways that no other visual novel has ever managed. Using your lover's mental instability to turn him into your personal cockslut was genuinely heartbreaking. But seeing it through the unapologetic eye of a maniac was a very interesting take. That being said, I really want to stress that there are literally dozens of ways to play this game. There are something like 24 endings you can get, and they can range from Maeda's time at the mansion being cut short because the master of the house decided to come home early, to Maeda being literally pinned down while Komine gouges his eyeballs out with a fork because he just snapped from all the abuse. With that being said, not every ending is a bad one. Granted, they do take up the vast majority of the endings, and the absolute worst endings are always the true one, because they highlight Maeda's true nature. But should you feel so inclined, you can treat your butlers kindly and in return get a sweeter, more romantic story. Or, well, ending, at least. Arisato's and Sakuma's route will allow you to be absolute sweethearts to them, but Toto's and Ichinose's stories really, they still made you go through some rough shit, and really the only thing that changed were their endings. And then there was Mizoguchi's route, which was, I thought it was gonna be all about that sweet age difference, because I'm not gonna lie, I've got a daddy king. And the first part of it was so great. You sat down with the sweet old man, you drank tea, and listened to each other's story. And then the ending happened, and that was when it kind of just twisted into some kind of piss-poor attempt at shoehorning humor into what is an overall dark and depraved game. I mean, he's like ripping out of his clothing, and he's like super built underneath, and he's teasing a group of rapists that are just looking to ravage him. It was complete trash, I'm not gonna lie. I genuinely do not understand why that route was what it was. Like, I honestly just don't. Regarding the characters themselves, honestly, they get as tropish as tropes can get. There's nothing unique or interesting about them, and there's no actual depth to who they are as people, with maybe the sole exception being Arisato. The writers attempted to give them all backstories, but they were really weak and pretty shallow. The only character that had any real personality was actually the main character, Maeda. The translation for Haruka Shitsuji is actually really good, and it's actually one of the best localizations I've seen come from Manga Gamer. So his thoughts and personality shone like a goddamn beacon. The translators even swapped out some slang that would have been lost in translation to make it more appropriate for a Western audience, which I feel was a liberty that really enhanced the narrative. But reading Maida's conspiracy theory about how he thinks the master of the house actually left the estate because he thought Ichinose was trying to poison him, and that's why he created the job opening, you know, for someone to die in his stead. I thought that was it was actually very welcomed, because given the adult nature of the game, the writers could have very easily have just said, LOL, it's porn, who cares? So Maida actively wondering why the fuck he's being paid to be pampered by Butlers for a month was a nice take on the normie stumbles into a life of luxury trope. I mean, that's not the only part to his personality. There's a lot more. That's just the easiest example for me to get a screen cap of, since it's pretty relevant in the beginning, rather than digging through an entire game for witty little one-liners. And considering I haven't uploaded in like over a month, you guys can imagine I don't really have the time for that. All in all, the story is pretty weak sauce, but Maida made it enjoyable enough for me to invest like 40 goddamn hours into getting all of the endings and all of the CGs, which is not fucking easy. It's worth noting that Naked Butlers is a rather old title for a visual novel. It was first released in 2011, and you can really see that in the art, specifically the hair textures and eye shapes, but it actually aged pretty damn well, and I don't have many complaints outside of the artist's awkward grasp of male anatomy, because the anatomy was just subtly odd. Like, it wasn't all bad, but you would look at it and you'd say, there's something not quite right here, and then once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. Like, their pecs ended too high, and their arms were a little short, and their dicks were all, for some reason, placed very low on their bodies. It's like all the pieces were right, but they were put together incorrectly. Outside of that, there are about 6 or 7 CGs per route, and some CGs and their variations you can only unlock by playing the game 2 or 3 times. So in terms of getting enough to justify the price tag, I do feel like just in terms of art, it comes pretty close. So, like I literally just said, you're going to have to play each route 2 or 3 times in order to unlock all of the CGs and all of the endings and shit. Because there are like 30 fucking endings. Now, some of the endings are just you dying in some freak accident. Some of them are dying beneath the fork of your love interest. Some are you succumbing to the estate's will and just becoming a psychopath. And some of them are actually normal. But which ending you get almost entirely depends on where you go on the estate and when. For 30 days and 30 nights, you can visit various parts of the mansion to spend time with a butler of your choosing by clicking the rooms that they are in. And out of those 30 days, you can spend 15 of them at school like a good dedicated student. But yeah, I actually really like the little map system because there wasn't it wasn't about guesswork. Like, you didn't have to guess who was going to be where and when, because they did move around the mansion quite a bit, and that's one thing that's always kind of bothered me about visual novels. The OST was kind of trash, though. Like, at some points, there was a setting appropriate track playing with strings and shit, and then there was dubstep and guitar riffs. So, TLDR, I have to admit that I liked this? Question mark? Like, don't get me wrong, the marketing for Harikashi Tsuji was absolute garbage. I went into this expecting something light and fun because it was marketed as a fucking comedy, and that is not what I got. It wasn't even close. No, I got excruciatingly brutal rape scenes, murder, Stockholm syndrome, and a cast of characters who are all suffering from some kind of mental illness where they don't hate the man that lords his position over them. No pun intended. But that didn't make the game itself bad. It was still good. I mean, the translation was A+. The prose was entertaining. The art wasn't necessarily an eyesore. The main character was intentionally painted as a sociopath. And there is a shit ton of replay value. Even if Mizoguchi's route was just fucking stupid and the OST could have used a lot of work, and by a lot of work I mean it probably just should have been redone entirely. In the end, it really just boils down to what you're into. I do feel like this was marketed more for gay men than straight women though, so that's just something to keep in mind. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Naked Butlers. If you've played it, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Otherwise, you can find all of my social media as well as my Patreon in the description. Happy unbirthday, and remember that Senpai loves you. Bye!